Hello participants, now we are entering in lecture 22 of micro irrigation engineering subject. Lecture 22 we will be dealing with micro irrigation, and this is just we are entering in the subject title micro irrigation engineering. So far we discussed basic fundamentals of the subject related to micro irrigation engineering, where we discussed about flow through pipes, means using principles of fluid mechanics. We discussed about soil plant water relationship. We discussed about different soil water potentials. We discussed about irrigation scheduling and then surface irrigation methods. So, let us get into the topic of today's lecture. This is on micro irrigation engineering. So, here we will deal with what are the benefits, what are the importance of micro irrigation engineering, when it was introduced, historical background, and in micro irrigation what are the different system components which are used, and what are the different types of micro irrigation. Now, when we say micro irrigation, it is one of the types of pressurized irrigation. Pressurized irrigation system is a system consisting of network of pipes, their fittings and other devices through which water is supplied by using external pressure from the water is brought from the source to irrigate area. Now, basic difference between conventional surface irrigation and piped irrigation techniques. Here, let us try to learn from the water flow regime, how the water is moving. So, when we say water flow regime, how the water it takes place. Is it means here water is applied in the network of pipeline where the pressure is created, whereas in surface irrigation it is overland flow. The overland flow means it is the inertial force, gravitational force, and then water which is released from reservoir. In canal it comes from certain pressure. So, gradient is causing the water to flow takes place. Route direction of the flow. Route direction of the flow in traditional method, it is simply a slope which guide the water to flow. In pipe flow, it will depend upon the how much pressure it is being created. Irrespective of pressure, irrespective of the direction of the flow or direction of the slope, the water will move into the pipe, that how much pressure it is being created in the pipeline. And then area irrigated. Area irrigated in the pipe flow, if there are several openings in the pipeline, so whole area can be irrigated simultaneously in case of piped irrigation, whereas in surface irrigation system whole area at a time it cannot be irrigated. So, this is the difference. This point where I am talking about the external energy required in case of pipe irrigation. It is correct, we need to provide adequate pressure in the line, in the pipeline, so as to deliver water at each and every point of the field, whether it is a very highly elevated point in the field or it is in a very low elevated point. When we talk of pressurized irrigation system, so this pressure which is being created by using pump, so it can be put up that how much pressure it is being created with the help of pump. So, is it a low pressure system or it is we are putting it using a simply overhead tank. So, if it is a low pressure system, so low pressure it is categorized by using means up to the pressure of 3.5 bars. When we say pressure, it ranges between 3.5 to 5 bar, it is a medium pressure system, and when the pressure requirement or pressure created is more than 5 bar, it is a high pressure system. So, means when we talk of micro irrigation system it uses low pressure, medium pressure a sprinkler irrigation system, and when the pressure requirement it goes very high, that is more than 5 bar, we can use rain gun, we can use centrally pivot irrigation system. So, there it depends that how much pressure it is needed, and accordingly if that particular type of device will be used. Now, coming to the micro irrigation system. So, what are the specific characteristics of micro irrigation system? A micro irrigation is a slow application of water on or above or below the soil surface. By using surface drip system, by using subsurface drip system, by using a bubbler, by using micro sprinkler. So, there are different modes of water application, but relatively the flow rate is small. In micro irrigation system, this another characteristics means it will depend upon the what type of device we are using. So, water can be applied in a discrete or continuous drops. It can be tiny streams or it can be miniature spray through a your foggers or micro sprinklers, which are placed along water delivery line, which we say lateral pipeline, which is adjacent to the plant row. Micro irrigation system is also called localized irrigation. Localized irrigation means it is to emphasize that only part of the soil volume is wetted, not the entire field is flooded, as in case of surface irrigation I just discussed in surface irrigation topic. So, this is in some literature, this is also called as a trickle irrigation system. So, micro irrigation has got different terminologies, and in different organizations. The American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers, they use term called micro irrigation. In India, we are using a term also by Government of India, they also say micro irrigation system, means the quite a good number of emission devices, it has been brought under micro irrigation. So, there are different implementing agency in different parts of the world, they are using different terminologies. Now, there means as far as the historical development of micro irrigation is concerned, it started as early as in 1860. In Germany, they used subsurface irrigation system for irrigating crops. In USA, this micro irrigation in the farm means they give terminology as a drip irrigation as early as in 1913. Again in 1920, Germany they used perforated pipe to irrigate crop. It was Simcha Blas in Israel in 1940. He saw there is a leaking pipe tap, and the plant getting water from this leaking tap, it had a vigorous growth. That tree had a vigorous growth as compared to other trees in the vicinity. So, then he thought, if instead of irrigating the crop continuously by stream flow and flooding the field, if we apply water drop by drop, and this he started working on this, and then he applied and then found that results are encouraging. And the concept of giving water drop by drop and then bringing commercial aspect of drip irrigation system, it came from Israel in 1960. Now, in Israel is the leading country who commercialized. In India, we had been giving water to tulsi plant, or there are various plant by using earthen pitches. These are our ancient history and historical development is sage, but we did not take up this work in commercial way. So, it is the Israel where they had a severe problem of water crisis, and then the large part of their desert land they converted to green valley because of the using the drip system. So, in India this started indigenous perforated earthen pipe, perforated bamboo pitcher in the northeastern region, and then pitcher and porous cups they started, but these were all in a very primitive way these things were being used. It started from the research point of view in research institutions and agricultural universities. They started in 1970, and we at IIT Kharagpur we also started doing this work in early 80s. We started doing our research work in early 80s. Later on, Government of India formed Precision Farming Development Center, which were 22 in numbers, which were formed by National Committee of Plasticulture Application in Horticulture, that is NCPAH. They gave 22 projects in different agroclimatic regions of the country, and they did lot of research work, and we also came out our research finding where large number of farmers they are being using micro irrigation system through the research work carried out in PFDCs. Now, what are the different micro irrigation characteristics? So, micro irrigation is usually characterized by these features. What is that? Water application is at slow rate. It is operated for longer water application time, means the duration of water application is large. Then water is applied at frequent interval. In surface irrigation system, when we apply water, the irrigation interval could be 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks, whereas in micro irrigation system, this can be daily or at alternate days, not more than 2 days irrigation interval. So, plant root system, they means it gets optimum soil moisture condition. So, better healthy growth of the plant it takes place. Water is applied at the root zone, means there is nothing like any flooding of water, exactly at the root zone water is being applied, and it is a low pressure water delivery system. And then water is routinely used to transport fertilizer and other chemicals. It means here fertilizer and other agricultural chemicals, they can be applied along with the irrigation water, which we call it as a fertigation or chemigation. So, chemical or fertilizers, desired fertilizers, it can be given. Now, you can see here the water is applied here in a tinny, and here the water is applied in a spray form. Now, what are the principal crops which are suitable to micro irrigation system, which are giving highly higher economic returns? So, almost all the crops are suitable under micro irrigation system, but it because of its initial investment, some of the crops which are giving higher return in a shorter period. So, the fruits, vegetable, ornamental plant, flowers, the spices, this has been found. Now, you can see here these are the fruit crops where the micro irrigation system has been found highly successful, and then here we see these flower crops which are being grown, tomato, these are vegetable crops, tomato are variety of crops which are shown here. So, all these crops are suitable. Micro irrigation is also applied to landscaping, greenhouses and nursery. Our researches in cereal crops like paddy, this has also proved that micro irrigation means it requires about 40% saving in water, and the yields are at par or more than the conventional irrigation system for irrigating paddy crops. So, like this wheat, rice and these crops which where people were not doing now, these researchers say, and then some of the farmers they have also started using micro irrigation for these crops. There are some advantages why micro irrigation should be implemented, because it has a increased water use efficiency. So, significant improvement the yield have been documented with micro irrigation system. So, water use efficiency means yield per unit quantity of water used, that has been means it is giving higher result. Improved crop yields and quality. Results means here the result in reduced plant water stress due to slow and frequent water application. What happened in case of surface irrigation system, the plant has to undergo the water stress due to drying phase, means there are few days where the rooting system of the plant it goes through the drying phase, and then few days means when the field is flooded with the water. So, there is a waterlogging condition. So, the soil aeration is poor. So, that affect the crop yield and then quality of produce. Reduced and non-beneficial use means here irrigation of smaller soil volume eliminated runoff and controlled depercolation losses. So, non-beneficial use of the water that is eliminated. To a certain extent we can use saline water, means we cannot use the as such saline, but to a certain level of concentration, means diluted water that can be used when by using the saline water, which is not possible in case of surface irrigation system. So, what happened? The soil water it gets more diluted by maintaining stable soil water condition when we apply drop by drop by drip irrigation system, and the salts get pushed beyond the active plant root zone area, because it is maintaining the stable soil water condition. So, concentration of the salt it is pushed out the effective root zone area. There are some other advantages. It has got the better fertilizer use efficiency, that is the another advantage. The water that means fertilizer it is remain within the root zone depth. So, water means as well as fertilizer used by the plant system is consumed more. So, fertilizer use efficiency is better. There is a decreased energy requirement, because it is a low power system, low energy system. So, the energy requirement is less. Improved cultural practices, it does not interrupt the cultural operation. So, weed infestation, there is a less the growth of the weed it takes place. So, that is another advantage. And then to a certain extent one can use the treated wastewater. Now, when we have got the shortage of water supply for irrigation purpose, so treating wastewater and bringing it for irrigation micro irrigation can be. So, lot of researches are being educated to go for using wastewater using micro irrigation system. There are some limitations or disadvantages of micro irrigation system. It requires extensive maintenance. So, partial clogging of emitters, leakage in pipe system and root intrusion takes place. There is a salt accumulation near the plants, that is the another problem. What happened when we are giving the water, saline water. So, it needs to be applied regularly. If we are not applying regularly, breaking the system and giving surface water, or there is a rainfall. So, that bulb which is maintaining that bulb will break and then it will come to the soil surface. So, this is the disadvantage. And another thing is that when we are applying salt water, it is likely that the salt will be deposited at the surface value. Restricted root development, when water is being applied on the surface. So, root development is means it becomes shallow root system. So, during wind condition, cyclone condition, plants get uprooted. That is the limitation of the drip system. Therefore, the subsurface drip system is being advocated in order to take care of development of the root system. High system cost, no doubt it requires several components which are expensive, but this system cost is partially supported by the government of India and the state governments are supporting. So, this is being restricted. Then there is a restricted crop rotation. This limitation usually applies to subsurface drip irrigation system. So, when the system is adopted, subsurface drip system is adopted, that is remain in the soil. So, one can use only certain crop which has got same type of rooting pattern, same depth of rooting pattern. Accordingly, that can be adopted. The micro irrigation system, one need to take care for the certain systems which should be considered while designing. So, we will discuss this part in detail when we will come to the design part, but means it has got systematic design and installation. It requires maintenance consideration. Yes, it requires maintenance so that in order to get higher life of the micro irrigation system. It requires certain management. Anything when we purchase, so maintenance and management is a important component, and that should be taken care in order to get the good response for the system. And then economics. So, economic part, that when we are considering the crop, we need to take care that whether this crop is profitable, and in terms of the yield, in terms of water saving, in terms of early produce, the time of produce, all these things are required to be considered while we are deciding. Now, let us come to the different components of micro irrigation system. This is very important. So, any micro irrigation system, water is being taken from the source. So, here this is a pump. Pumping can be water which is being pumped, it is brought to the pipeline. So, it requires a filtration, and then from filtration it goes to the the filter system. So, after it goes to the filter system, then it comes here in the main pipeline, and then subsurface pipeline, then the lateral pipeline, and then on the lateral there are emitters. So, we can say, if I am just putting it, we can say the entire micro irrigation system, it can be divided a distribution system. A distribution system, practically it receives water after it passing through the head control or control system. So, when we say that the distribution system means, here I am telling you that main pipeline, branch pipeline, sub main pipeline, that is your main pipeline, then you are seeing that is a sub main pipeline. This is your main pipeline, from it goes to sub main, then sub main manifold, and the sub main manifold, then there are laterals, and then on the laterals these emitters or emission device. So, this entire system we can put it as a emission devices, and then control and automation is the another part, that is your valves and sensors that can be controlled. We will discuss these things in detail when we will come to these topics. And then filtration and fertigation, that is another part. Then the other part is your power supply, that what is the type of pump which will be using, and then from where the means water will be pumped to the system. Now, there are different types of micro irrigation system. Surface drip system. So, let us come to the surface system. Surface drip system uses emitters and laterals that is laid above the ground level. So, you are seeing that there is this is your sub main pipeline, and then lateral is attached with the sub main pipeline, and then lateral is laid above the land surface, and then drippers are attached at appropriate location in the surface drip system. So, generally in surface drip system, the emitters which are used, they should be delivering discharge that should match with the infiltration capacity of the soil. So, normally these drippers are of 1 liter per hour, 2 liter per hour, 4 liter per hour, 6 liter per hour, 8 liter per hour. It should not deliver water which will form runoff. So, the 12 liter per hour is the maximum capacity, it should be always less than 12 liter per hour. Subsurface, as the name says, that the pipeline as well as drippers, they are buried below the ground level, and these are put up at appropriate depth, so that the plants receive water exactly at the root zone depth of the plant. Here the evaporation loss is controlled. So, evaporation is controlled, and then the total life of the system is also large, and this is also possible to provide irrigation as well as fertilizer in whether it is a surface system or subsurface drip system, both can be operated, and then it has got longer operational life. Bubbler, as you see here, the water supply is being given here when the quality of water is poor, and we have got water amount of water is not a limitation, then in that case bubbler can be used, and when the quality of water is poor, means the drippers are getting clogged, then this bubbler can be used. So, water is applied to the soil surface in a small stream or fountain. It looks like a fountain opening with the point source discharge rate greater than the 12 liter per hour which is used in surface of subsurface drip. Usually their discharges goes up to 250 liter per hour. These are used extensively for irrigating the crops which are say perennial crop, fruit crops, say orchard crop, or they can be also used for landscape. So, for that purpose the bubblers are used. Micro sprinklers for close growing crops, and when the quality of water I am telling you poor in the sense means lot of sediment or silt is flowing with the water. So, the orifice size is large, in that case micro sprinkler, and particularly for the irrigating close growing crops like you can say spinach, the crops your fenugreek, the dhania, such type of crop it can be irrigated. So, air is instrumental in distributing the water, and they means these such micro sprinklers have got higher discharge. Normally their discharge is less than 175 liter per hour, and when of course it is vulnerable to the high wind, because the wind it drifts the water distribution pattern, and also evaporation can take place. So, those were the devices which I discussed about the different types of micro irrigation systems, and these are the references. You can refer these references which are useful for this topic, and so let us summarize about this particular lecture which I have taken on micro irrigation. So, we discussed about the importance of micro irrigation system, the historical development of micro irrigation system, what are the characteristics and the principal crops which are suitable for micro irrigation system, and then what are the different types of this MI system design consideration one should take, what are the different system components, and then the types of micro irrigation system. And then in the forthcoming lecture we will be discussing about the what is the drip irrigation system and what are the different types of drip system, drippers we will discuss in detail in the forthcoming lecture. Thank you very much. Good day.